What's going on, fish nerds? Carlos here, and today I'm bringing you my top 5 tips for breeding fish for profit. Let's get started. Alright guys, tip number 1 is choose fish that are low maintenance to breed. Not just prolific or easy breeders, but fish that are easy on you when they breed, as far as the upkeep and the maintenance of taking care of the fry and raising the fish up. Because it's one thing to get a prolific fish that puts out a bunch of eggs or a bunch of fry, but it's another thing to have to take care of those fry. And if you're choosing something like discus or angelfish or rams, things like that, there's a lot more that goes into raising those fry up than if you go with something like guppies or bristlenose plecos. So for instance, with guppies, you really don't need anything special. You don't need any live foods, anything like that. You just take care of the fish, they make babies, you take care of the babies, you're good to go. You can crush up flake food, you can use powdered food. They have fry foods that you can use. You don't have to do anything special for guppy fry. Bristlenose plecos, you feed them enough, give them the right parameters and everything, they breed. The babies come out of the cave. It already, right away, they're eating the same exact foods as the adults. Nothing special to it. Shrimp have babies. The babies hatch out of the eggs as miniature shrimp. Nothing special you need to do. Just feed them. They're good to go. Whereas with things like angelfish and rams and discus and things like that, there's different stages. You got to start off with your live foods. You may have to separate from parents and do different things to keep the eggs from fungusing over. It's a lot more labor intensive. So the less labor that you have to put into raising the fry, the better for you, especially if you're somebody like me and you're not full-time. And if you're got a full-time gig breeding and selling fish, you don't need this video anyway. But if you're just a regular average hobbyist like me that's just trying to make a few bucks selling some fish here and there, if you're working a full-time job, you know, you got your regular 9 to 5 and stuff, you don't have a whole lot of time to be pouring into large-scale breeding of things that are going to need the care and the labor that a lot of fish need if you're going to breed them. It's one thing if you're going to, breed killifish every now and then just for fun, but if you're going to be breeding for profit and putting out enough fry for it to actually be profitable, it's going to be really labor intensive to do things that are not really low maintenance when it comes to breeding. So if you stick with plecos that essentially by the time you're feeding them and they're not on the egg sac anymore, they can just eat the same thing that their parents eat, or livebearers, things like that, that's where you want to be when it comes to breeding for profit. Now if you're a full-scale fish farm and you've got it's what you do full time, so you can dedicate all your time to it, and you got employees and stuff like that, you know what, breed everything because you've got the resources for it. But if this is just a side thing, a hobby that you're just trying to make a few bucks on, you're going to do a lot better with fish that are not labor intensive to breed and raise the fry. Tip number 2, find a gap in your market. Whether you're selling to your local fish store or whether you're selling online, find a gap. And what I mean by that is, even though you're going to be breeding, if you follow my strategy, if you're going to be breeding something that's low labor intensity to breed, find a color or a strain, something that's going to set you apart a little bit, or something that's a little bit harder to find, so that there'll be a demand for what you are breeding. For instance, I went to my local fish store before I started breeding, and I knew I wanted to do livebearers, so I went and I was just talking to him, and I kind of poked around, found out what is more unusual for him to get as far as what he typically has a need for. And then I came right out and asked him, I said, okay, in the way of guppies, what color do you not see very often that you would like to have more of? And he said, well, I rarely ever see any blue guppies. It would be great if I could get some blue guppies. So what I did, I went out to Aquabid and eBay and I started shopping for blue guppies. And that's what I've got. I've got the blue mosaics. And because of that, I've got a pattern in the mosaics that are a little bit harder to find, as far as you're not going to very often see mosaic guppies at like a PetSmart or a Petco. But I've also got the blue, which he doesn't necessarily have all the time. And they've turned out to be very popular. So now anytime I've got guppies, I call them, I say, hey, I've got guppies. They want them because they sell out of them in a day or two every time I take them guppies, because they're popular, because I found a gap. Now, if I just had red deltas, he's got those all the time. If I had blue Moscows, he's got those all the time. If I just had regular fancy yellows or cobras, he's got those all the time. So I'd have to be competing with other people and waiting until he's sold out of theirs, you know, because like with the platies, I did the platies in the outdoor tub last summer and ended up with hundreds of mixed platies. Well, I go back, I'm like, hey, I've got platies. Are you interested in my platies? He's already loaded up on platies. He doesn't have room for any more platies. And every time I've asked him, he's already got too many. So he's overrun on platies. There's no gap there. So I've had a hard time getting rid of them. And whereas with my bristlenose plecos, I knew from all the times I've been there, I had never seen super red bristlenose plecos at my local fish store. So I got the super reds because he's always got the regulars, he's always got the albinos, and he's always got the calico bristlenose plecos. But I'd never seen super reds. So I got super reds. And when I started breeding those, I told him, hey, I've got super red bristlenose. He's all over it because I found a gap. And if you're not marketing to your local fish store, if you're going to be selling online, just search for some stuff on eBay, Aquabid, and find a variant that is a little bit harder to find, or at least one that's going to be more expensive or higher priced, but still low labor to breed. Like with the super reds, they kind of go through phases on Aquabid. There'll be a few months where there's just everybody is selling super reds on Aquabid, but then there'll be a few months where nobody's selling super reds on Aquabid. So I go when there's nobody selling and I start listing on Aquabid and they sell better. Or on eBay, you really don't see super reds on eBay very often, hardly at all. Or at least when I've looked, I haven't. So when I list them on eBay, they sell relatively quickly. So find that gap. Look around, see what isn't available, but that would still have a demand. Tip number 3, make sure you weigh all the pros and cons about whether or not you're going to ship fish. Because yes, you will get more per fish if you sell online directly to the customer and ship the fish out, depending on what you're selling. But if you're selling something that's relatively available locally, you're not going to be able to sell as many. So if you've got a very common variety of guppy or platies or something like that, a live bearer that you can get pretty well anywhere, or if you've got regular chocolate bristlenose or albino bristlenose that most people can get in a local fish store or even a PetSmart or a Petco, you're not going to have as good of luck selling online because people don't want to pay to have fish shipped if they can get them local. Other pros to selling to your local fish store are you'll never lose fish to shipping. You just won't. As far as selling online though, a big pro there is if you do have something that has a demand for buying online, whether it's a type of guppy that's not commonly available, like you got a specific strain, or if you've got super red plecos instead of just chocolate bristlenose, or if you've got some other type of pleco that's a little harder to find and you're breeding those, or you've got something about what you're selling that's different than what's usually available, you should have a better demand online than other things, and you should be able to get a better price than selling to your local fish store, because your local fish store is going to pay you 25% of what he's going to sell the fish for, because your fish store owners, they have a 400% markup on their fish, so you're only going to get a quarter of what they get. Whereas if you're selling online, you can basically sell for about what they're going to sell for, so you can get potentially 3 or 4 times more per fish, but you may not be able to sell quite as many, and you're gonna have some hassle. Shipping fish isn't the biggest hassle in the world. If you know what you're doing and you've got everything together and you're doing it right, you can mitigate a lot of that, but still it takes longer than you expect. It's a little bit labor intensive, and it's time consuming. Catching fish, bagging them up, packing them up, getting everything ready to go to the post office. It is a time consuming thing. Even just to send out 2 or 3 packages in an afternoon, you're looking at an hour and a half sometimes, if you got to cut the foam and everything like that for your packages and stuff. So there's a lot to it. So make sure you weigh all that out and figure out what works best for you, for your situation, for your willingness and ability to ship, and what's going to work best for what you have to sell. Tip number 4, stick to what you enjoy. If you are breeding a fish simply because you think it'll be profitable, but you're really not into it, you're setting yourself up for burnout. Stick to things that are fun. Because if we're not enjoying it, what's the point anyway? There's other things that you can make more money doing if it's not going to be fun in the first place. So if you're going to be breeding fish for profit, it needs to be something that you enjoy anyhow. So stick to fish that you enjoy keeping. Because once it just becomes more of a chore than a hobby, you're just going to burn out. It's not going to be fun anymore. It's not going to be worth it. There's no point in doing this at all if it's not for fun. So stick to what you enjoy. And if you start breeding a fish, even if it's doing well, if you figure out you're just not into it, move on to something else. If there's something that you just really want to breed, get it, breed it, do it, have fun with it. Make sure you keep it fun. All right, guys, that's what I've got for you today. Those are my top 5 tips for breeding fish for profit. If you want a full exposition on all things you need to know about breeding fish for profit, go check out Aquarium Co-op's channel. He's got a playlist over there for breeding fish for profit. All kinds of good information that goes into far more detail than these quick 5 tips that I've given you here today. So go check that out. And if you've got any tips or any advice on breeding fish for profit, throw those down in the comments below. And if you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. It means so much when you guys do that. And if you haven't already, subscribe and hit that little bell notification icon so they'll notify you when my new videos come out, because they are coming out every single week. Every Friday morning, I've got a new video coming out. So hit that subscribe button, hit the little bell notification icon, and thank you guys so much. Thanks for watching this video. Thanks for all your support. You guys are awesome. God bless you, fish nerds. I will see you next time. Tip number 3. What is tip number 3? So, how many of you actually noticed that I changed my shirt?